So now putting on my other hat, thanks for coming to Grand Rounds and hearing about what we do at the University of Colorado. Myself, Kason Pierce, and Anna Neumeyer are the three directors of our course, and so we will co-present this. So you'll hear from me first, and then Kason, and then Anna. And we're going to talk about three different aspects of our course that we thought might be helpful to other courses, because our course is very complex and very big, but works on a very shoestring budget. So I'm going to talk about resources, then Kason's going to talk about how we do a pretty massive endeavor to recruit faculty to come teach for free, and then Anna will talk about how we get those faculty members to come back and teach again. So before we start, I wanted to make sure we're all working off the same definition of a transition to residency or TTR course. So when we use this term, we mean a curricular element that's designed to make day one ready interns. So people who are ready in the first day of internship, but lots of people call them things like boot camps, capstone courses, prep courses, or intern orientation. Our course, the University of Colorado, it's 4 weeks long. It's delivered post-match in April and May. There's 176 students plus or minus each year. And then everything we do is specialty specific. So we have 7 different specialty contexts. It's anesthesia, emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, OBGYN, and surgery. I think I got them all. Family medicine, I think I mentioned. In a given topic area, so like delivering serious news, we do standardized patients cases for that. And so we have a standardized patient case about disclosing the death of a patient. But the death is an in utero fetal demise for OBGYN. It's a small baby in pediatrics, and then it's a trauma patient in surgery. Medicine is a cardiac arrest. So every topic that we teach is seen by all the students, but the context of what they see it in is a little bit different depending on what specialty cohort they're assigned to. We teach a lot in our course, but the big 4 buckets of things we teach are clinical skills, communication skills, personal and professional skills, and procedural skills. And you can see some of those topics that exist in each of these buckets. The clinical skills is SIMS and cross-cover. Communication skills focuses on very advanced difficult interactions. Personal professional skills includes teaching skills, but also malpractice, wellness, journal club. And we have only a few procedural skills because most of them we felt like didn't need to be taught for the first 3 months of intern year and are taught somewhere in residency, depending on your specialty. So I'm going to talk about resources now. So that's the big overview of our course. But we don't have very many resources. We're a state-funded school. We have actually not very much devoted to this course, but we struggle with resources across all of our institution. So I'm going to walk you through a thought exercise. So follow me as if you are developing a course and you have similar resources to us. So you don't have a whole lot, but that you want to deliver it for 4 weeks. You have 176 students to teach, and that you're really focused on improving their skills rather than knowledge. You want them to be day one ready. You don't want them to review some things that they may not know. So we're trying to perfect skills that they should be good at, but not good enough to be ready on day one of intern year. So what are we going to do? Well, a few assumptions before we dive into the logistics. So this thought exercise assumes that we all know what we want to teach. We have the educational expertise to actually build those things, and that we have freedom related to our leadership team at our school to do what we want. And so we're not being prescribed to do specific things. If we start with 4 weeks, we're going to do some math because I love math. If you break each of the 4 weeks up, you say, yeah, there's 40 hours in a typical work week. And so we could teach 40 hours a day for 4 weeks in a row. However, students can't learn like very intense things for 40 hours a day. And we don't have the time to actually be actively teaching over 40 hours each week because we have a lot of prep and follow-up and other things. So in reality, we're probably talking more like 20 hours a week is what we have to actually do active learning activities. So this is about 4 hours a day. And so we've got 80 hours to start with. The easy thing to do would be to just say, let's just teach lectures. Then I need 80 hours of faculty time to be actively teaching. Then, I can go recruit that many people and be done. But this isn't great to practice skills. And we said that we want our interns to be day one ready. And so we want to use more active learning mechanisms to teach them. The 3 big pedagogies that we usually use in TTR courses, but in our course in particular, is case-based learning, which ideally is in small groups, so 8 to 16, kind of pushing it on the upper level of what a small group could be. Sims, which we like 4 to 6, so that people have a chance to lead, but also to do other activities. If you have too few, it's hard because they just don't have enough hands to resuscitate a patient. And then standardized patients, we do ours in groups of 1 to 4. We like 4 because you get to observe some other people and watch their communication skills, but we need each person to have one case that they do one-on-one with a standardized patient. So even in a group of 4, you need 4 cases that they have to go through.
Isn't SPs part of the sim center?
It depends on your location. So we run ours through the sim center, but we think of those as pedagogically different. So we have our standardized patients. I want my students to do one-on-one interactions because they're practicing often communication skills, where we don't have them do solo resuscitation simulations, because in general, you wouldn't resuscitate a patient by yourself. I mean, not that that doesn't happen, especially out of the hospital, but yes, ours happens in the same location. So continuing our math, if we have 176 students and we teach them all of our sessions over our 80 hours of curricular time in groups of 16, that's 880 teaching hours that I now need. So I went from 80 to 880. But if I break it down into 8s, more typical small group, now I need 1,700 hours of teaching time. And if we go down into quads, we're at a mere 3,500. And I don't know about you all, but I don't have 3,500 hours of faculty time just sitting around waiting for me to ask them to come teach for me for free. So what do we do with something like simulation in terms of figuring out how much time we're going to devote to this, and what are the students doing during that time, and how do I actually get them through a sim center? So if we teach in groups of 4, we want to do a half hour per sim, which is very fast for resuscitation sims, so including the debrief, like 15-minute sim, 15-minute debriefs real quick. But right, we're shoestring budget, so we're going to do it as like fast as we can with as few resources as possible. But if we want our students to have at least 6 sims, so everyone gets to lead one, and then you get a couple to fix all the problems that you had the first 2 times. Now you start doing that math, and you have 132 hours of consecutive sim time if you ran it in one room. We have 4 rooms, so we can run it like 4 times faster than that, but it still takes 33 hours to get our group of students through 6 sims. So it's 4 days of consecutive sim time. And then the question is like, well, each student is only active for 3 hours. Like, what are they doing the rest of the 3.5 days? And how do I manage all of that at the same time? So these were the 2 big problems that we faced up front as we were designing our course. And here's our solution. So we decided to start cascading things. And so in 4 different cohorts that you can see here, so anesthesia, OBGYN, and 2 surgery cohorts, each one of those cohorts of 16 people will go through one session at one time. So anesthesia starts with sims, and then OB would do sims in the next block, then surgery 2. And when they're not doing that, we have them doing other things. And so you can see this nice checkerboard, beautiful pattern where we have 4 different sessions that they cover over the day. And so in this way, we actually have now offloaded our sim center, where we can run far fewer of our students through that because they're doing other things in other locations. It solves 4 problems for us. So it keeps the students from being idle. It gives our faculty who are experts in specific things the opportunity to teach back-to-back. So like POCUS, we have only so many people who are ultrasound experts, and they can teach back-to-back all day long. Since they're only getting groups of 16 instead of getting an entire class at the same time. It helps us with space limitations, so we only have 4 sim rooms. But then there's materials, so POCUS being some of those, but also procedural skills. We only have so many mannequins that we can use at any one time, and it divides that over multiple sessions. So this is great. It covers 4 of our cohorts, but then the question is what are we doing with the other 8 cohorts that cover the rest of our 11 to 12 total? And the answer is that they are doing a similar cascade, but just with different sessions. And so if you look on a 3-day time frame, you can see that they also are cascading. So we're cascading within the day, but also cascading day to day. And we've built in independent learning for our students because we have a lot of pre-work that they have to do, and there are other things they have to get ready for residency. So we deliberately put some learning white space in there for them. And so now you see all of our 16 cohorts. And then what does that look like on a 4-week schedule? So these run in rotations of 3-day blocks. So they'll do rotation 1 through 6 over a 4-week time period. This is ideal, and this is what I would do if I had all of the resources available, but I don't. So I actually can't access my sim time at any time that I want. And so between our sim time conflicts with some of the other courses in the med school and some of the other things that the students need to do, we also have tried to give them some time off to travel to find a place to live in residency. We actually only get through 4 official rotations, and then we have a handful of other scattered curricular elements that fit in the gaps. So what does this add up to for our course? So we have 27 small group or case-based learning sessions that totals 40.5 hours of in-person time. We do 3 different sim sessions that are an hour and a half apiece. That's a total of 4.5 hours. We have 2 sessions of standardized patients that are each 3 hours long for a total of 6 hours. And so we have about 13 hours of other things, finance, patient presentations. The student life folks will come and talk to them. So our students see 64 active learning hours over our 4-week course. It's not even quite 80. I will tell you that many of their complaints are that our course is still too heavy and that they have a hard time learning even 64 hours at this point in their training. We ignore most of that, but we have been thoughtful about how we try to give them some recovery in there. There's a few advantages that we like with the cascading schedule. Repeating the curriculum in sequence has an additional advantage of allowing you to fix problems. So when you roll out new curriculum, something doesn't go right, you do it once, but then you've got the other 11 cohorts coming after that. And so you can fix fundamental flaws in the session for the subsequent sessions instead when you run it all at one time, everyone is experiencing that flaw at the same time and you have no way to fix it until the next year. Our content experts, so we have transfusionists, we have actually nurses and RTs, palliative care, addiction medicine, they all can come, and there are not that many of them. So I only have about 7 or 8 addiction medicine specialists in our entire system. So I can't have them all helping to run a 16-person group at the same time. There just aren't that many. But when we run it in sequence, now I can have them teach multiple sessions, and so I can divide my experts into multiple places. And then we'll talk a little bit about our session leads later, but we've now had an ability for leaders, it could be us or someone else, to watch a session happen repeatedly. So you can see, how did it go in medicine? How did it go in surgery? How did it go in peds? And actually watch it happen and then fix the nuances of, oh yeah, the person who taught it, didn't like this point or said, we're not doing this anymore. And so we'll make adjustments to the curricular materials as we watch them happen, because they don't all happen at the same time as well. But there's a few disadvantages as well. So running all these different sessions at the same time is chaotic. So there are often 8 different sessions happening at one time in terms of 8 different content pieces. It also gets a little more complicated when you think of the sequencing, when you want one session to happen always before another. It means it has to exist in an entirely different rotation, or else people could see it out of order. So we want our ACLS training to happen before we do simulations. So those have to exist in different rotational blocks. We have a few other things that happen one, and then the subsequent one that builds off of the first session. And then the students find it challenging because they're not all doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing generally with their cohort of 16, but they initially need some more coaching to follow the schedule. This is an overview of some of the logistical resource problems, but it's not the only resource problems that we have. Recruitment being one of the other ones. But one of the other challenges we found is that we can't be in 8 places at the same time, which wasn't that different from running it all at the same time, but we've got another solution for that we'll talk about as we go. And with that, I will pass it on to Kason to talk about recruitment.
Thanks, Matt, for that overview. I'm going to talk about our recruitment. So Matt kind of introduced you all to the challenge, and this is just to go into another aspect of that in terms of our faculty recruitment. So when you do this cascading schedule with a bunch of small groups, you end up with about 600 sessions over our 4-week course. And to teach those appropriately, with some sessions being taught by multiple faculty from different areas of expertise, you need about 800 faculty. Also outlined at the beginning, we have not a lot of FTE to pay faculty to show up to actually teach in our course. So almost all of our faculty who are coming are doing this on a volunteer basis. So that's a secondary challenge that we face with the course. Looking at how this has played out over the number of years we've run this, we think about traditional teachers, and I think everyone could point to these places to find faculty. So current residents, we certainly utilize those, including surgical residents who have a very busy schedule. So chief residents show up to teach in our course on a volunteer basis, as do people from fellowship. So palliative care, for example, in our communications portion, we've had our pulmonary fellows help with the SIMS. Oncology fellows have taught in a number of places. And then our current faculty is a big place where we look for volunteers. There's some non-traditional teachers that we use. And so we have a database of all of our teachers. We actually have not a huge number, but a small number of people who are former Basecamp students. So they went to medical school here, they stayed here for residency. They had a hugely positive experience in our course, and they actually come back as teachers. We reach out to some alumni in the community who graduated from our residency or fellowship programs. They teach within the course. Matt talked about some of our interdisciplinary faculty in terms of pharmacists, respiratory therapists, and nurses. And then we have some of our content expertise coming from transfusion medicine, from grant-funded addiction specialists. We actually have some faculty who are out on medical leave who are available to come in and do teaching, even though they're not seeing patients in clinical practice. We have some retired faculty, some deans within the medical school, and even full professors coming to teach. So I think that speaks to our ability to recruit from a diversity of places and from kind of non-traditional areas as well. We look across our faculty to kind of understand who's teaching and how often they're teaching. And so this is the breakdown. And what you see here is over 50% of our faculty, or somewhere about 50%, are teaching multiple sessions. So that could mean that the same person is teaching the same content area twice. That also means that some of our faculty are teaching different sessions in terms of content. So they may teach one on opioid management, for example, and then come back and teach a separate session on on-call challenges. And so this just reduces the problem in terms of recruiting, because instead of needing 800 unique faculty to fill these sessions, we need maybe half of that when people are returning to teach multiple sessions. The other thing that Matt highlighted was the cascading scheduling of our course. And by doing that, it allows faculty to return to teach multiple sessions. So they can find times within their clinical schedule where they're available, and they can actually come back and teach on 2 separate half days, or in a morning and an afternoon, or over different blocks within the 4-week course. Looking a little bit at the design details and delegation of this, we really think of this as a hub and spoke model, and we'll talk about that more in a subsequent slide. But some of the things we do that are effective are recruiting early. So we start our recruitment 6 months or so in advance, and a lot of the recruitment falls kind of in the 3 to 4 month period in the lead up to the course. We start with our prior teachers, people who've taught within our course and generally had a very positive experience. So that's kind of easy recruitment. The cascading schedule I mentioned, and that gives people multiple opportunities for specific sessions they may be interested in teaching. If they're in the clinic and they have certain half days per week, or they're on an inpatient service, they can hopefully find a time in our schedule where they can teach an area that interests them. We have significantly streamlined our sign-up process. So we use Sign Up Genius. That includes clear descriptions of all of the sessions. It demonstrates all of the times that are available for faculty to sign up for, and it updates in real time. So when we send an email out in recruiting our faculty, it includes all of the different sessions. They can click on that link, read more about the session, and then see which times are available that might match their schedule. They can actually change session times themselves if they need to, and that updates us. And then delegating recruitment is a huge aspect of our success in managing to fill all of these faculty slots, and that's what I want to talk about in more detail. That happens through multiple channels. So this is our general approach in recruitment. So there are 3 of us. Jason Brainerd actually is here as well. So there's technically 4 of us who are working to recruit for transitions to residency, but there's a lot of recruitment that needs to happen. So here are the course directors sitting in the middle. We have faculty that we identify as content leads. So for us, what that means is we need to teach a session on pain management to all of our subspecialties. So we have specific faculty within the institution who have expertise in that area. Their role is to help develop the content related to pain management or SIM content or ultrasound content. And they're kind of a hub within our wheel that then have points of contacts who are going to be spokes. So content, again, is more to design specific sessions where the content is the same or has the same objectives for all specialties. Examples of that: palliative care, opioids, transfusion medicine, and point of care ultrasound. We also have specialty leads. So the specialty leads help us to refine an area of content to match it to the clinical nuances of a specialty. So we would write opioid content, and then there's a surgical specialty lead who would adapt those cases to surgical practice. So although the overall learning objectives are the same, we're going to refine the case and the nuances of that to match surgery, et cetera. So the specialty leads, we have those individuals in all of our specialties: anesthesia, emergency medicine, family, internal medicine, OB, peds, and surgery. That is another hub within the wheel, which then allows us to recruit outward within those specialty areas. We also have prior teachers who serve as a recruitment tool to us, and Anna will talk more about the satisfaction of those teachers and the retention that we have. But that is another asset in terms of us being able to reach out to volunteer faculty within the institution that we may not have strong personal relationships with ourselves. Matt, okay, perfect. Answering the question on specialty content leads. The last place that we look for faculty are our general faculty listserv. And so this is where we go to a little bit later in our recruitment process to fill the gaps that we haven't already filled via these other routes. So this just shows you in the hub and spoke model, we have all of these different hubs, which are then helping to reach out to subgroups within the institution. And we are able to reach into a lot of areas we wouldn't be able to recruit faculty from. The last piece of recruitment that we think is important is aligning faculty's intrinsic motivation. So again, we're not giving people FTE to come teach in our course, we're recruiting them on a volunteer basis. So how do we get them to show up? A lot of it is aligning their intrinsic motivation to teach with our course. And so things that we do are, in developing the specialty specific content, our teachers then look at that and recognize that, hey, this is kind of my stuff. These are things that I see every day in my clinical practice. This is relevant to me. And this is something that I am very passionate about teaching. That may not be something that they're necessarily an expert in or not an identified expert within the institution, but certainly we have a number of our faculty who feel like communication of serious news is really important to them and an area where they're passionate about. And so they come up to help teach those specific sessions, even though they're not palliative care trained or they don't have advanced communication training. The other thing that helps with recruitment is in these subspecialty groups, faculty recognize that these are kind of my people. So I'm a surgeon. These are surgical students who are going to be surgical interns and residents. And so that feels right with me. I feel connected with those individuals. They're going to be rotating with me in the OR, or they're going to be rotating with me in the outpatient setting if I'm a family medicine practitioner. And so I want to come teach these students because they're going to be people I'm working with going forward, or they're students that I've worked with in the past. By having those small groups, it also promotes connectedness our learners. And so I think our faculty, when we're sending these invites out, they look at the description of the session, they look at the content, they see that it's a small group, and that makes them interested in signing up because it aligns with their intrinsic motivation. So this graph is just to show you that if those things were not aligned, right, we would have only a moderate amount of success in recruitment, but by aligning intrinsic motivation with the design of our course, it sort of amplifies our recruitment strategies and allows us to fill all of these faculty needs. And I will hand it over to Anna to talk about our retention strategies.
Great. Thank you so much. So we've discussed kind of the challenges that we face with resources and potential strategies to overcome that. some strategies to help optimize recruitment for a course that requires a lot of faculty teaching hours. But then the last challenge I want to discuss is that of attrition, and really the solution to that being retention. And so in a course that relies on many, many faculty to teach, attrition becomes a tremendous threat. And I think it's important to recognize that traditional efforts to motivate teachers, such as extrinsic motivation, are probably insufficient for faculty retention, recognizing that as educators, we all have reasons for teaching that are far beyond that of any type of external motivation. And so really to describe how we've addressed efforts to promote retention, I think it's best described kind of using the conceptual framework of self-determination theory, which really states that our ability to have autonomy, mastery, and relatedness kind of helps inform or foster our motivation and engagement. And so I'm going to share 3 examples of how we have designed our course to really promote aspects of this conceptual framework. And the first relates to autonomy. As we've mentioned, we have specialty-specific course material and instructors, but what that does is it allows teachers to really feel ownership of the content that they're teaching. We recruit experts in certain content to teach within our course, and so they're able to really teach within their area of expertise. And then within our teaching guides, we, although we have a kind of a script and some objectives and formats and cases, we encourage our faculty and teachers and instructors to share their expertise, to share their experiences, so they have their own ability to have autonomy in that teaching experience. The second relates to mastery, and I want to kind of introduce a new innovation that we came up with last year that turned out to be quite valuable. And that was that of creating a role of a session lead. And so Matt alluded to this earlier, but we wanted to create an opportunity for educators on our campus to gain some additional experience in curriculum delivery and directing the educational programming. And so we have many small groups. We want to observe them to ensure that the quality is adequate and to identify areas of improvement. And so we decided to create a call for faculty to volunteer their time as a session lead. And so these were the expectations that we set. So we had 21 small group sessions that needed a lead, and we wanted to recruit faculty to direct and support the teachers, meaning we asked for a 3-day commitment, so to oversee all sessions, so all 11 sessions that are delivered to the cohort, to provide just-in-time faculty development, to both direct and observe the session, so sit in on the sessions, gather feedback from the instructors, gather feedback from the students, and then edit and improve the session. And of course, they're available to fill in for last-minute session absences. We actually thought this was a quite big ask, but I think like really relying on this self-determination theory or this desire for mastery, we actually had all 21 session lead spots were filled within 24 hours of our call to invitation, meaning that there was a need on our campus for clinician educators who wanted more experience overseeing curriculum delivery. And we were able to provide that opportunity and really cultivate the mastery of our faculty as educators. And so what this session lead did, kind of aligning with self-determination theory, is it created a career development opportunity for clinician educators. It was a meaningful experience. It allowed them to advance and develop new skills, and as well as allowed us to improve the curricular programming for our students. And the last component of self-determination theory I'd like to describe as it relates to our course is that of relatedness, which is really fostering that connection of the educators across our course that are coming together to teach our students. And so we do that through very thoughtful and structured aspects of recognition and appreciation. And so we are very intentional, and we send a lot of direct communication from our course directors to our faculty. Both our communication is both written with an email providing all course materials 1 week prior to the session, as well as an email 1 day prior to the session providing our personal contact information. An immediate true thank you, not a form letter, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We provide a token of recognition for our teachers who commit even more time to our class or to our course. And then for those teachers who teach all day in recognition of their time, to minimize their efforts of having to go across campus to find lunch, we provide them lunch. So just to describe kind of what we would say is the art of a thank you is that we try to try to provide this prompt, meaning we send a thank you or a recognition of our teachers the same day that they teach. We ensure that it's not a form letter, but in some way it's personalized. And how we do that is through those specific observations, the feedback from either the students or the session leads or the course directors. And then we incorporate any planned changes or improvements or suggestions that our teachers provided us with that thank you. And so for any group of teachers of a given session, we send a thank you that same day with that information. And then we also seek their opinion, right? Relying on their mastery and their own autonomy is to provide us feedback. And we have a link to a questionnaire where they can fill it out to provide any additional improvement on content, which they hadn't provided earlier. So if you were to map our faculty experience, it would show that we have tried to, at many points without our course, try to have a very faculty-centric approach to optimize their teaching experience with the hope to encourage them to come back. I think that teaching students is incredibly rewarding. It's why we are in the field that we're in, but also thinking about how do we make it as facile as possible without and eliminate any barriers. And so we start by sending these faculty emails with the materials right there, easy to get, easy to access. We provide just-in-time info, our contact information. When the faculty arrive to teach, we greet them either by our session lead or our director, or often both. We ensure that our session materials are both printed and available in the classroom, and the slides are already posted in the classroom, so then our faculty aren't having to worry about downloading from the internet or AV access issues. Immediately after the session, we check in with the faculty to see how the session went. That's either done with our session lead or our director or both. As I mentioned before, for faculty who teach all day, we provide them lunch. And then for faculty that teach in more than one session, we provide a water bottle. And it's a nice water bottle. It has an emblem that we've created with the CU School of Medicine. It is useful, and it also serves as some advertising as our educators are carrying around the water bottles as they're on campus. Immediately after they teach, we provide a thank you email. And then, of course, approximately 3 months later, their teaching evaluations come, which can go for their faculty promotions packet. So how much does this cost? And I think that recognizing that we don't have significant financial resources, we provide about 100 water bottles a year because roughly 100 teachers teach more than one session, and approximately $20 a piece. That's about $2,000 a year. And then for lunches, we have approximately about 50 faculty that teach for an entire day. And so we're providing $15 a person, about $750 worth of lunches. And so if you were to compare that to the number of teaching hours that we're recruiting from entirely volunteer group, it is actually not expensive whatsoever. It's really comes out to be about $1.75 per teaching hour. So what are the impact of our retention efforts? And so we've kind of looked back for the past few years. In 2023, we had a total of 363 unique teachers that taught kind of those over 800 hours worth of teaching sessions. And of those 363 teachers, 132 had taught the prior year, which is roughly 37%, and 43 or 12% had taught in the year before in 2021. And then of those, 34 taught in both years. Looking back to 2022, of the 371 teachers we had that year, 28 or 7% taught the year prior, and they also, but then they didn't return for 2023. So it's showing that in part our retention is improving. And I think one thing that we can't emphasize is even if you have 30% of your faculty come back, if they're teaching more than one session, you've almost reached, perhaps even like half of your recruitment efforts just by focusing on the retention. So I think in summary, we have learned a lot by running this course, and I hope that we've been able to share some potential strategies that might be useful. But to summarize those strategies, the first is that cascading a schedule can innovatively address resource constraints and optimize efficiency and allow you to deliver the pedagogy that you hope to. The hub and spoke design supports high recruitment efforts, as well as ensures a breadth of expertise and that you're really reaching all of your faculty. And then being thoughtful about design approaches to optimize faculty experience are supportive and can be integral to promote retention. And so with that, I will end our screen share and we can go ahead and take some questions. Thank you.
I want to ask something about who is the reservoir of your faculty that you send emails, because we don't have such a big one. We are not, we don't have a medical center, so we are very limited. We have different ways to cascade and do things, and we are much more limited with manpower. So it's interesting. Maybe it will give me an idea to where to go.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I do think that being very thoughtful about what are the faculty resources and what are the educator resources. And so I think we recruit from our trainees, but then we also, we do have a large faculty listserv, but that actually becomes a quite small amount that contribute to our overall educator pool. We also have a community-based practice faculty listserv. So of all of the practicing providers that are in the kind of metropolitan area, who have a affiliation or an appointment as a faculty, but are not practicing at the academic centers. And so we also send recruitment emails to that listserv as well. And so, but it is important to think about your catchment area of faculty, but also to recognize that all it takes is finding one person to really serve as that connection point, and then they can reach out to their contacts, and from there you can build a better network of recruitment.
But based on what you showed, the fact that they don't return, the return rate is not so great, then you need to have a really big reservoir.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Keeson.
So I think thinking about the retention numbers, there are several factors. So we recruit fellows and residents, right? Not all of whom stay at the institution. So there's certainly some natural attrition. Some faculty go on to other positions, or they may go on to FTE support and feel like they don't have time to come volunteer and teach in our course anymore. So yes, I agree. Our retention rate could certainly be better, but we also, given those factors, I think we consider our retention to be quite good. And that's why our general faculty listserv recruitment email is the last thing we do, because the other channels we have in the returning faculty generally fill most of our slots for a year. And then we reach to those other places to recruit new folks kind of at the end.
So I have a two-part question, if you don't mind, regarding evaluations. What are ways that you have done to ensure faculty would get detailed evaluations from students? And then secondarily, if the evaluation is not so great, or under observation, you feel like a faculty is not doing what you had envisioned in the course, how have you guys approached that in the past?
Great, I can start with that and then open it up to Matt or Keeson to add. So for the evaluations, whenever a faculty member signs up to teach a session, our evaluation office then at the end of the day asks the students to complete the evaluation of both the faculty member as well as the quality of the session. And we try to intentionally ask those questions differently, meaning if we design a session that didn't kind of meet the curricular quality mark, the faculty member is not penalized for that. And so it does create a fair amount of evaluation work on behalf of our students. And so we actually provide the evaluation midway through the course and at the end of the course to try to help prevent that burden. But we also want our faculty to receive those evaluations in a timely manner. And so in general, we're able to complete most evaluations by most students. Whenever a faculty is teaching a very small group of students, meaning 4 or fewer, there need to be at least a composite of 4 student evaluations completed before those are released to the faculty. So every now and then that can impact the evaluations that are completed. But in general, most faculty do receive teaching evaluations from the course. And in general, our students really are very appreciative of the faculty. And so it becomes an incentive for them to come back and keep teaching. The second question related to faculty that are maybe don't receive the best evaluation. And before any evaluations are released to our faculty, our evaluations office sends them to us to review, and we go through all of the comments. And if there are comments that are not as positive or constructive or need to be addressed, we actually will then set up meetings or just like a quick connection with the faculty to discuss that. And oftentimes it's, hey, we set you up in not the greatest way, right? Like our session design wasn't perfect and this happened and we wanted to talk about this. Or if it really was an issue of faculty performance, we're able to coach. What's helpful about all that connection up front is that oftentimes we know our faculty members. And so you're not reaching out to someone who you've never met before. You know them, you've met them in person. And so it makes it a lot easier to have those feedback conversations to help them grow from the feedback that was provided.
Yeah, I can say, I was looking at our evals right now. So from 2023, we don't eval every single person of every session. There's a few sessions that don't get eval for different reasons, but we have 480 instances that a student evaluated a facilitator in a given session. Of those, we have only 3 out of 480 that were below a 3.5 out of 5. And only if you cut it off at 4, there are only 13. And then if you look at just like 3.5 and below, it's actually only 3 facilitators. So one person got multiple like evals that were lower, and we know them all like pretty well. So they're all people that I would have zero problem reaching out to and saying, hey, here's what happened last year. Like, here's how we would coach you going forward. But we don't have anybody who's, I mean, the lowest out of 5 for anybody in 2023 was 3. Oh no, we had one 2.7, and the next one's 3.
And then as far as the question around, are the faculty and session evals a separate evaluation forms or combined into one? I believe they are separate. So we have like a course evaluation, which describes kind of some metrics around the course. And then we ask about the effectiveness of each session, the challenge level of each session, and that's the course evaluation. And then the students also receive individual faculty evaluations for the sessions that the faculty taught.
One other question was about retention. And so I was looking at that in real time too. And if we look at the number of people who returned from 2022 to teach in 2023, they taught the vast majority. So I think they taught like 60 to 70%, just off the top of my head, of the sessions. So a lot of the people who are returning are teaching multiple sessions. There, the other piece of data that will be more helpful if we look at this in about 2 years is that we added sessions the last 2 years. So there were some areas of content expertise that we didn't need in the 2022 year, but did in the 2023. And so we added new people because we had actually new needs.
Don, I think to answer your question about the survey burden, so from the very first part of the course in orientation, we highlight to the students, like, look, this is supposed to be very helpful for all of you. And we set the sort of the groundwork or the stage for them to be engaged and provide us helpful feedback. I think those in-person conversations with faculty and students after each session also make students realize that we're listening to what we're saying. The cascading nature and allowing us to change things on the fly between like the morning and the afternoon or make improvements. Students recognize that. So I think all of those ways help them to feel like we're actually responding in real time to their concerns or their suggestions. And then I think the small group structure in general, they feel more connected with their faculty and more inclined to complete an evaluation when they're one student in a room of 6 or 8 or 12 than if it were a lecture hall and there's 150 of them in there.
We also give them, in essence, every third day off to work on independent learning and residency prep and preparing for the next set of sessions. And so we reiterate to them that like you have this whole day where nothing is mandatorily structured for you. So you have time to do, 20 minutes of eval every third day. So our survey is end to end. It's actually broken into 2-week chunks. So there's a first 2 weeks, second 2 weeks, and they can just fill it out in pieces. So they just don't finish it and like submit it as finalized. So they're finishing it as they go. So it's kind of both in that way.
But we do not have the students to self-assess their improvement and skills via that type of survey. We do have within our simulations, the students kind of work with the same very small simulation cohort, and they run through 6 successive sims. And so as part of that debrief and reflection, there's a little bit of guidance on how did the last session go? What am I going to do? And so we use the self-assessment as a learning strategy, but we don't actually have a formal self-assessment of skills, which is a great idea.
Yeah, if I had to reflect on what a lot of other great courses are doing out there that we are not, we don't really have much in individualized learning plan or any like post-match handoff to residency, and we have not implemented very many assessments yet. So those are on our horizon. We kind of prioritized building this massive course and trying to make sure that it ran well, and said, let's teach you first, and then we'll figure out these other like bonuses later. As a side note to that, the compendium, in addition to continuing to expand its offerings, we're getting ready to actually release another call for new compendium materials in January. The next 5 years compendium plan is actually to add assessments to most, if not all, of the compendium pieces. So if you implement those in your course, there will be assessment modalities that will probably be some combination of formative and summative assessments. So probably multiple assessment components of it, but we're still working. That's a very early process. Great. Thanks for coming. We appreciate everybody's being
much.
engaged and hanging out with us. If you have any questions, we're all available. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'd love to answer other questions. We're happy to like look at other materials that you have or share things that we have that aren't on the compendium. So